Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Cole here, and today we're going to be talking about the first couple hours of Lies of P that have recently been released as a demo. And I'm just going to play my hand pretty straight on this. I played it, it took me a little over 2 hours to get through it, I took my sweet time with it, and I really liked it. This game is just kind of the Bloodborne 2 that we're never going to get. Like, this is the next best thing that we will ever get to a direct sequel to Bloodborne. And so just getting into it, I was actually surprised by how drawn in I was by this game's story and world in the first couple hours. The story is very much loosely based on Pinocchio, and when I heard that a while back, I wasn't quite sure what that would really mean. But when you pick up the game and you start playing, it is very, very obvious that it is really based on Pinocchio. So our character is known as the puppet of Geppetto, and Geppetto is the guy who made all of these puppets, which are just what they call all of these automated robots throughout the city. But obviously, just at a first glance, you can tell that something's pretty different about our character because he's referred to as a puppet, but he looks very human-like, and the other puppets really don't. Clearly, there's something very unique and very special about this character. Unfortunately, there's not much that I can really say about that right now because none of that really gets touched on in the demo, but there's definitely some intrigue there, at least for me personally. And then just beyond that, basic setup of kind of the world as it is when we get to experience it, is that these puppets pretty much went berserk and started killing people within the city. And around the same time, or maybe a little bit before, there was also some sort of sickness starting to spread around, almost like a plague that has started to kill off a lot of the population that is still here. So really, for the majority of the game, you're going to be exploring the city, which is called Krot, and there are just going to be these puppets everywhere, and you're not really going to see many people outside of like the hub area and some occasional NPCs. And getting back to kind of that Pinocchio thought, the game is called Lies of P, something that I wasn't quite sure what it was supposed to mean up until I kind of got like an hour into the game. And there's a moment where an NPC that's been guiding you through the opening area tells you that you need to lie to the security guard, and that if you do lie to him, he won't be able to tell because puppets can't lie. And then you get up to that dialogue with the security guard, and it has this like very sudden dialogue option come onto screen and ask if you're going to tell him that you're a puppet or lie and say that you're a human. This happens a couple times throughout the demo, and it's really interesting. Obviously, that's going to be a big point in the plot of the game, something about you being able to lie while most machines wouldn't be capable of it. There's another thing similar to this where you can find a puppet in the hub area that tells you the basic rules of being a puppet. And one of those is that a puppet can never harm a human, but then a little bit after I had this discussion with this guy, I ended up fighting a boss that was a human and killing him, and they made sure to make a point of it, having a small cutscene of your character looking at the blood on his hands and seeing what he's done. So I'm really interested to see where all of that is going in the full game. Beyond that, in terms of world design, I love the art style. I think the graphics here are pretty nice. Something that might be a little weird for newer Souls fans is that this game is not very open-ended. It does go back to that formula of having large open levels that the Souls games used to have prior to Elden Ring, but what it doesn't have is the ability to choose how you want to progress through those levels in terms of like what order you really do it in. You do just kind of go in a straight line from one level to another, at least in the demo. That could be different in the full game. But here, there are kind of just 3 areas played in succession, and once you get through one of the areas, you go on to the next one. So if open world or even just open-ended level design is your thing, this might not be the biggest sell for you. That being said, I don't think the level design is bad. I would say that the levels were a little smaller than I was expecting. They definitely don't feel as large as a lot of the Souls games from Software do. But the quality of the levels themselves and the way that you move through them, the enemy encounters, all that sort of stuff is still very good. I have no complaints about any of that. And I guess getting more into like gameplay flow and stuff like that, the combat here is just really fun, at least in my opinion. And the combat is really where the Bloodborne influence kind of comes through in its fullest. A lot of it is what you'd expect. You have a weapon, it's your melee weapon, you hit things with it, you deal damage. But on top of that, you also have your left arm, which is like a full mechanical puppet arm, and there are multiple variations of this thing that you can get, and each of these gives you a unique ability in combat. So for example, one that I ended up getting during the demo is one that has a grappling hook on it, and at first I thought this was going to be used for like navigating levels, like getting to areas that I couldn't otherwise, or shortcuts or something like that. But what it's actually for is hitting a puppet with it and yoinking them over to you for a quick hit. On top of that, each weapon has 2 special attacks that they can perform, and there's different types of these. There's a type that's like purely defensive and works as a counterattack. There's one that is fully offensive and just unleashes a ton of damage in one swing. There's one that will kind of buff your weapon temporarily, just increasing the damage that it does. And each weapon has a couple of these mixed and matched, and it gives the weapons a lot more personality and variety in this game than I've seen from a lot of Souls-likes. So in terms of just your weapons, what's here is pretty good. And of course, as you'd expect from one of these games, there is a dodge function. But really, I did not use the dodge anywhere near as much as I used the block and the perfect block. And this is where the biggest Bloodborne influence for me comes from gameplay-wise, and that's this game pretty much has the rally mechanic from Bloodborne, but it's changed up a little bit here. If you take damage while not blocking, you're just going to take the damage as you would normally. If you block an attack, you're going to take that chip damage, but you're going to have the rally mechanic kick in, where if you hit the enemy back within a certain amount of time, you can actually regain that health with each attack. But if you perfect block, which is pretty much a parry, you'll not only get a slight stun on the enemy, but you'll also completely negate any of that chip damage from being taken. Beyond that, there are enemies that have what are called fury attacks, and the enemies will glow red before performing these, and at first I thought this was going to be like the Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor games where they're unblockable attacks, but they're actually undodgeable as well if you're close to them. You can't iframe through these. The catch here is that you have to parry these attacks in order to effectively counter them. And of course, you see this in boss fights a good bit, and I think that that is where it's the most tense. Because at least for me, my instinct with the bosses was to dodge them instead of try to block or parry them, because I would take a lot of chip damage and have to get it back, and it just wasn't an effective strategy. But these fury moves forced me to get in there with the boss and really learn their attack timings and parries for them, and I actually ended up really liking this by the end of my couple hours. There's also a mechanic here that's kind of similar to like poise in the Souls games, where after you've dealt enough hits to an enemy or a boss, you'll be able to stagger them. But the catch here in this game is that when they get enough poise buildup, their health bar just kind of gets outlined in like this little white effect. And when you see that, it tells you that you have to do a fully charged heavy attack to actually stagger them. So even when you've got that poise buildup, you're still going to have to make a very calculated decision on when to try to get that stagger to get the visceral attack out of it, and I think that that's a really positive change here. Overall, I don't want to go too in depth. This demo is free to download on Steam if you want to just go and check it out. I absolutely recommend it. I look forward to seeing what this game brings in the full version coming out later this year. I believe it's September. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But definitely, if you're a Souls fan, this is one to keep your eyes on or try the demo of, and especially if you're a Bloodborne fan, even more so. But what do you guys think? Do you have any thoughts and opinions based on the video? Have you played the game yourself and you have opinions from that? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to go ahead and leave a like, a comment, a subscription, anything to let me and the algorithm know that you enjoyed it and push it a little bit further. I would really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this video, then you would probably enjoy my last one where we talked about my full thoughts on Jedi Survivor after 100% completion, so I will have that linked on screen right here.